Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today we're talking about a quick way to better navigate conflict. This episode came about because my partner Patrick and I were recently interviewed on a relationship podcast, which, if you are on my newsletter list, you will find out about it when it comes out. And if you're not, make sure you get on my list. Anyway, we were being interviewed, and Patrick outlined 3 questions that he asks himself when we get into a conflict and he starts to get tight and constricted and defensive. He asks himself these 3 things. Number 1, what do I need here? Number 2, what does the relationship need here? And number 3, what does Marie Elizabeth need here? The order of these 3 questions is crucial. I was so impressed that he laid them out this way. He hadn't actually described his process to me before, even though it didn't surprise me because he's so skilled and he's able to turn himself around when we have a conflict. I was surprised at the genius of the order of the questions, and here's why it matters. If you focus on what the other person needs first, instead of tending to yourself and then the relationship, that's going to set you up for all kinds of people-pleasing, self-sacrifice, codependency, all kinds of ways where you focus on the other person in the relationship at your own expense. And over time, that leads to resentment and disconnection and exhaustion because you're not getting your own needs met. Similarly, if you focus on what you need only without asking yourself what the relationship needs and what the other person needs, that will tend to fray the connection between you because you're not actually tending to or tuning into what the relationship or the other person needs. Now, you may be wondering, what do you mean? What does the relationship need? You may not have thought or heard of this idea of the relationship being its own entity, its own being. It's the being that exists between you and the other person. In my practice, I call it the union. It's sometimes called the third. In fact, Robert Bly wrote a fantastic poem about this third called The Third Body. Go look it up if you haven't read it. It's a beautiful poem. And when we put our attention not only on ourselves and the other person, but begin to tune in to what is this union between us? What does this third body need between us? When you begin to be able to tune into that, it liberates you from being overly stuck in my way is the right way or their way is the wrong way. Because when both of you pay attention to what the relationship is actually calling for, sometimes it might be your way, sometimes it might be their way, and sometimes it might be a third combination or a whole new way that arises because you both have placed attention on, well, what does the relationship actually need? What would benefit our connection? That's another way to say that. What would benefit our connection here, independently of me and the other person? What would actually benefit the space between us and have us feel more connected? This is so crucial when you're in a conflict with somebody because of the tendency to get so hyper-focused on, well, this is what I want, and this is what I think, and this is my way, and or vice versa, becoming a doormat and just giving in to whatever it is that the other person wants. By focusing on what you need first, which may be to step away from the conflict for a moment, to tend to yourself, to settle your system, to come back to center, to resource yourself more fully before you come back into the conversation. You might need to get a bite to eat. You might need to listen to some music, take a bath, take a walk, get out in nature, take a nap. When you resource yourself first, you can have more bandwidth and more skill when you come back to the conversation because your nervous system isn't totally fried. And then the second question, likewise, focusing on, well, what does the relationship need here, gets your attention off, I want to be right, or they're wrong, gets your attention out of the dispute and into a co-creative process of figuring out like what would actually be good for the relationship. And then lastly, what do they need here? What does the other person need here? Oh, they need my attention. Oh, they need to feel like I care. Oh, they need some tenderness. By asking the first two questions, it actually frees up your bandwidth to be able to feel what the other person actually needs. Very often, as I'm sure you know, when we get into conflict with one another, we're not actually in conflict about the thing that set off the fight. There's usually some preceding thing that either has not been communicated, it's been suppressed or shoved under the rug or glossed over in some way, and then erupts later with the proper stimulus, with the proper situation to catalyze the conflict. But you can't even get to that awareness if you don't first tend to yourself so you can be more resourced. Second, tend to the relationship, asking what the connection needs, getting out of one up, one down, right and wrong. And then thirdly, asking what the other person needs. And this is you asking yourself what you perceive the other person needs here. And when you're through the conflict enough, where you can ask a question that might be met openly with an open answer because the person feels safe enough to answer you because you're not about to attack them or take their head off, you might ask, hey, what do you need here? But the tone of that question is so important. It has to come from a place of curiosity, not condemnation. And so to even be able to get to a place of curiosity where you could ask them what they need, because maybe you can't perceive it, to even get to a place of curiosity, you got to ask those first two questions first. What do I need? What does the relationship need? And what do they need? So go forth, have better conflicts that actually bring you closer. This is a road to that. I'm so grateful for Patrick, who laid out these 3 questions in our interview. If you would like to find out when that interview is coming out, because it was juicy and amazing, down below in the show notes, there are links for you to take my assessment. I recommend that you take my quick relationship alchemy assessment. I have one for partnered folks, one for single folks. It's a 4 to 5 minute long assessment, and it'll give you a clear snapshot of what's already working great in your relationships and where you could use some attention to grow and get more skill. So if you'd like to find out about the podcast, that is the easiest and quickest way to both get on my list and also learn more about yourself and begin your growth process of showing up more effectively and lovingly and skillfully in your relationships, whether you're having a conflict or not. So this has been a quick way to better navigate conflict. I'm Marie Elizabeth Mali, your relationship alchemist. And remember, a great relationship starts with you.